end. We're going to record this as well. Hello, Suzanne. Hello, Diane. How are you? Susan, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. And Diane, welcome as well.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to give Facebook a minute or two to just let people know that we're on and that we're live. This is also being recorded. So if you are watching this on YouTube later, we aren't live with you, but it's going to be a great conversation. So stick in and stay with us because it's going to be a really fun conversation. So I always like to ask, Suzanne, where are you calling in from today?
Susannah, you're asking me?
Yeah.
I thought you said Diane. I'm here in Connecticut. I'm in Greenwich, Connecticut.
Okay. And you are having how's the weather there? Is it all pass you by, or are you still in the middle of some bad weather?
It is so humid that someone made a comment we could be in Florida.
There you go. Because Diane, you're joining us from
West Palm Beach, Florida. And we have the humidity, but we also have the heat. So summer is officially here.
Well, I don't want to make y'all jealous, but I'm in San Diego and it's about 71 degrees and kind of perfect. So sorry about that. But just to let everybody know who's not familiar, so we've got the South, we've got the Northeast, and we've got San Diego, which is in the farthest southwest corner of the US. Warwick's is located in La Jolla, which is just a little bit above San Diego. So if you're in the San Diego area, we'd love for you to stop by the store and pick up Susan's book and Diane's book as well. But if you're joining us from anywhere across the country, I'm going to put in the comment section of Facebook the links on how to buy their books. So go ahead and click on those, and we can send those books anywhere in the 48 contiguous states. Also in that comment section is where you're going to put some questions if you have for Susannah or Diane. They'll chat for about 30-ish minutes or something, or around that time, and then I'll bring in some questions that you have. So we always love the audience questions, so don't be shy and join us with those questions. So with that, I'm going to do my job, which is introducing these two wonderful ladies and authors, and then I'll go away for a little bit. So Susannah Marren is the author of Between the Tides, A Palm Beach Wife, and A Palm Beach Scandal, and is a pseudonym for Susan Shapiro Barish, who has written over a dozen nonfiction books, including Tripping the Prom Queen, Toxic Friends, and You're Grounded Forever, but First Let's Go Shopping, which I love that title. I just think that's such a great title. For her nonfiction, she has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, the Chicago Tribune, Elle, Marie Claire, and has appeared on national television, including The Today Show, Good Morning America, CBS, CNN, and MSNBC. She's been a guest on national radio, including NPR and Sirius Radio. For over 20 years, she has taught gender studies at Marymount Manhattan College and has guest taught creative nonfiction at the Writing Institute at Sarah Lawrence College. Presently, are you still teaching at the Westport Writers Workshop, Suzanne?
No, I'm not doing that this year.
Not doing that this year. We need to update.
I'm touring my book.
There you go. We're on a tour, which is why we're here today to talk about Maribelle's Shadow. So we can't wait to hear about that. So joining her, like I said, is Diane Bergner. Diane is the Chief Development Officer at the Raymond F. Kravis Center for the Performing Arts in West Palm Beach, Florida. Before joining the Kravis Center, Diane was an attorney in her native New York City and the Director of Public Sector Career Services at Hofstra University School of Law, where she earned her Juris Doctor degree. As a chartered advisor in philanthropy, she has served in the leadership roles on several not-for-profit boards in Palm Beach County. She is a member of the Writers Academy at the Kravis Center and was a runner-up in the Best Writer in Palm Beach County, hosted by the Palm Beach Book Festival. Her debut novel is Royal Coconut Beach Lunch Club, which that sounds super fun too. Ladies, have a great conversation, and I'll see you in about a half hour.
Thank you so much.
So Susannah, this is just such a pleasure to have the opportunity to have this conversation with you. I'm so proud that you're my friend, mentor, and I cannot help but say my fairy godmother of the literary world. And you really do believe in the concept of women supporting women, and especially other authors. So thank you for that. And let's get to what we're here to talk about. Maribel's Shadow. I have to say, I just love this book so much. And it is just, it's a mystery and a page turner, but the lessons in it are so deep as well about women and family. At the heart of it is her namesake, Maribelle, and she's widowed within, the first 15 pages. So there's no spoiler alerts here. And the fallout of her husband's death spins this family, the Barrows, into this, I'd say, wild frenzy. And they start behaving, each character who is so poised and I want to say almost perfect looking, spins them into this frenzy in such unpredictable ways. Why this plot, and what was your inspiration behind this storyline?
Well, first of all, I want to say how happy I am to be here with you, Diane, and that I'm a fan of your novel. And when I learned that we would be together, it was just perfect. There's perfection. So, Maribel's Shadow is this story that's been with me for decades. I have had these characters, these 3 adult daughters, Maribelle, her middle sister, Caroline, and her younger sister, the youngest, Raleigh, and the mother, a trick of a mother, on my mind for so many years. And there have been several iterations of this novel. And I've always known the beginning and I've always known the very end. Mm-hmm. And that has really compelled me. In terms of their behavior, I've long been intrigued with how women are positioned in society, the faces we wear versus how we truly feel, why we have to be the good girl, the pleaser, and why it matters so much in Palm Beach, a really beautiful, rarefied town, why it matters so much that this family, a matriarchal family, because Lucinda, the mother, is widowed, well, the father has died, and while she's remarried, her husband is arm candy, and it is all about her daughters, and she strives for success, and she strives for an appearance that's just beyond reproach. And of course, Samuel's death, as you said, just stirs up every secret and lie that each of these characters has ever really hidden very well.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that you said arm candy, because usually it's the man, the rich gentleman who has the trophy wife as the arm candy, and you reversed it in this case, which I loved, because it is true, it is relevant, but there's not enough said about that, and this speaks volumes to that. So and I have a feeling, well, you've written 13 nonfiction books and now 4 novels. So how did the nonfiction, all the work that you've done, and you are an expert in women's studies and gender roles and all that, how did that inform this novel?
It really is very informative, because for each of my nonfiction studies, and I've done 3 different studies on the role of wife in contemporary American society, and I've written a book on mothers and daughters, and mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law, and sisters, and friends and foes and rivals, and why women keep secrets and lie for the cause, and why women who are traditional women in many aspects are willing to have an affair during the course of a marriage or a long-standing relationship. So given those studies, where I've interviewed a diverse group of women in terms of age and race and social strata and level of education and ethnicity from all across the country, I am really listening to these women about emotional longing. So if you have an MBA from Harvard, or you barely got through high school, if you are having trouble with your mother-in-law, if you're unhappily married, if your daughter is really concerning, it just doesn't matter. So the emotional yearnings of women are very similar, really, across the board. Mm-hmm. And so one of the big questions for me is, what is truth for women and what is loyalty? Mm-hmm. Because in a patriarchal culture, we constantly realize the limited goods theory applies to us. There's just not enough pie for women. And so I put this story in Palm Beach, where it's as you know, Diane, because you work there and live there. It's rarefied, it's beautiful, it's privileged, and people aspire to it. In a capitalistic society, it's really one of the plum locations. And yet, women can still be very troubled. Women can still have a big secret to cover up and a lie worth fighting for, even in Palm Beach. And so that's what happens here. This family unravels, and it's totally supported by what real women have told me in real time. And as you said, you know, it's a mystery. So the suspense is, why did Samuel die? How did Samuel die? And who was this man?
Mhm. Well, that's enlightening. I have to admit, I read and heard you speak about one of your nonfiction books, A Passion for More. And when you spoke, and it's in the book, you said something about women can renegotiate their marriage. And, you know, it's not like the good old, 1800s where women didn't have that kind of role, and women can now, make choices and do that kind of thing. And you put that line in your fiction book somewhere, and I thought that was brilliant, and that was great. So I sort of knew the answer to the question, on a surface level, that yes, your nonfiction so informs your fiction, but in so many ways, when I was reading Maribelle's Shadow, just how your knowledge just permeates, yet it's such a good story, and both of those came through. I do want to talk about Palm Beach since you mentioned it, and I'm not trying, see, this is the real Palm Beach look, and this is not why I'm doing this. I had an eye issue this morning, and I'm preventing the glare from the light.
With a very chic hat.
Well, thank you. I thought it was appropriate, though, for this kind of conversation to do that. Another thing that you captured so well in this book is really the essence of Palm Beach. I mean, just some of the lines, short little ones, is something like, she was not out to impress anyone. Unlike Lucinda and William and the rest of the guests, she was not at a party or a dinner or a charity event per night. Well, people wouldn't even believe that, right? That people actually go out every single night. Well, they do. I mean, every little nuance, that's one tiny example. You captured it so well. And I thought it would be great if you could share with everybody, your relationship to Palm Beach, why Palm Beach. I know you have a steeped history here. So why don't you share that with us?
So Palm Beach is a place that I've been going to since I was 2 years old, since before I can remember. My parents went there when they were a very young couple with young children. They had a friend who was actually developing the area, and they were intrigued. My mother was from Brooklyn before it was cool, and she'd never seen anything as magical as Palm Beach, the beauty and the lifestyle, and it really appealed to her. And my father was a ranked tennis player, amateur, but ranked for years in Florida. And he played a lot of games there. And it really was a way of doors being opened. If you're that good at tennis, it really opens doors. And they fell in love with it. And so my older brother and I were there like every Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter break, all during high school. And say like the day I either graduated from high school or left for college, one of those days, my parents said, we are becoming Florida residents. So they were here for decades until my mother died 5 years ago. And I would come and visit often. And my children grew up doing the same with their grandparents. And I would walk down Worth Avenue, which is like the Rodeo Drive or the Madison Avenue of Palm Beach. And I would look around, and I was struck by several things. One was, Diane, that women of any age seem to be so confident and have so much of their own power. And I was really impressed that ageism didn't seem to affect the women in Florida. I found it fascinating as a gender professor and just intriguing in terms of socialization, that somehow these women were so confident. And then they were all so coiffed and looked so good. And so stylish. And I thought to myself, because I had listened to so many women about how they truly feel, as I mentioned before, what lurks beneath? What are, in a place where obviously you have beautiful things and live in a beautiful place, and in terms of capitalism, it's a win-win. What are your secrets and what is the cover up? And so I thought about it a lot, and thus became the Palm Beach novels, A Palm Beach Wife, A Palm Beach Scandal, and now Maribelle's Shadow.
Well, you captured that well, and you captured the next generation too. So much is, talked about what you said, Palm Beach, the matrons, the older women, yet there's a whole new generation. There's no accident that this is now called Wall Street South, right? We have the next generation all moving here. And if you walk around the Royal, which you talk about in the book, the Royal Ponciana Plaza, Zimmerman and all the cooler, younger women, stores are there. And, I'm so glad that you gave a lot of credibility to that generation as well, and through the eyes of the characters. Which, by the way, you have, I know Maribelle is the name of the book, the lead character. We're following her journey, but we're also following the mother's journey and Maribelle's two other sisters' journey. The way that you wove those stories together, I didn't feel like anybody was excluded. I got to know each of those characters and each of those journeys. And I think that's a real talent, I have to say. How did you do that? How did you pull that out?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I wanted this to be a multi-generational story because of what I said before, that I saw women in their 30s, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, walking on Worth Avenue, and all of them seemed so self-aware and so present, that because I always worry, based on my nonfiction, that women can become invisible, and they were very visible, which really resonated for me. In terms of the sisters, I'm really fascinated by the sister bond. I had a book that came out, my second book, nonfiction book, is called Sisters Devoted or Divided, and I interviewed several hundred sisters and chose really poignant and touching and amazing stories for the book. And the study has continued all these years. As a teacher, as a professor, I've kept my anecdotal qualitative research going for a lot of my books and nonfiction. And so these sisters, I would say, I know so well that I could even tell you, and the mother, that Lucinda, despite, no spoiler, but she comes from nothing, but Lucinda will still want ketchup from Costco. And she, and what she wore back when they lived in the Panhandle, it doesn't escape her completely, although she's incredibly chic and so refined. But, there are memories, and they're in the book of, when they were all fishing,
Right.
and what everyone looked like then and what they wore. So that's another theme of the book. What is aspiration?
Mm-hmm.
And at what price do we pay to achieve that? It's been a hard journey for Lucinda, but she's achieved a great deal. And why is she so compelled? What is celebrity culture in a way? Not that these are celebrities, but they're very known in Palm Beach, which makes it much harder when Samuel dies and everyone has to cover the reveal.
Exactly. And they're not. So everybody's supposed to be perfect. I think you called them the PPs, the perfect people, at one point. And all of a sudden the family's not so perfect, and how Lucinda deals with that was really, said a lot about her journey, and the other characters too. I mean, they're so eclectic. Each daughter is so different and has different aspirations and different goals. Is there do you identify with any one of either the three sisters, or Lucinda, or Aunt Brian, or any of the characters, or they're just sort of pulled from your imagination?
Definitely my imagination. I can actually see these women in my mind. And but Aunt Brian, I'm glad you mentioned her. You know, she's Lucinda's friend and sister-in-law from the Panhandle. And she, you know, she's a tough one. She's really tough in every way, but she comes across as so really quiet compared to the others.
Yes.
She appears to have no agenda, and for that, but she's, you know, she's also a trick. And for that reason, I really wanted her to be the conscience of this novel. I really wanted her to represent that.
Yeah, right. Yes. And she did. She was sort of, in a way, the voice of reason. Most
She
of the time.
is.
But
And
yeah.
of course, she has her own secret. I'm so convinced that women in you know, a culture filled with male supremacy have secrets in order to survive. And this is really a survival story. Again, it doesn't mean they don't have beautiful homes or beautiful clothes, but when put to the test, and who knows, you know, things would have gone along just fine had Samuel not died suddenly. And that would be what I would call in a screenplay, the inciting incident. So once the whole situation with Samuel changes, you know, Samuel's death changes everything, everyone is put to the test.
Right.
And that's really how we see it.
No, definitely. Everything just sort of, everybody's world, their perfect world got turned upside down, and then each women's path.
And another interesting theme to me is, what is loyalty? You know, because there's so many prescribed expectations, you know, expectations and prescriptions for women as loyal. To whom are we loyal? Is Maribelle loyal to a husband who is now gone? Does she fight the fight to preserve who Samuel seemed to be? Is she loyal to her sisters? Are her sisters loyal to her? And what about a mother? And this goes to something I've studied in my nonfiction world and as a professor. What about family systems? What about hierarchy? What about a mother? You know, when I did my study, you know, on mothers and daughters called You're Grounded Forever, but first let's go shopping. I looked at mothers, I interviewed mothers who had daughters from 3 years old to over 30. And when there were several sisters, the mothers said to me that they often identified with one daughter more than the other, or the others. And sometimes it was because the daughter was just like a mini version of the mother, a new version. Oh, she was also the homecoming queen. She was also the editor of the yearbook, or because she exceeds the mother's dream. Oh, she was the homecoming queen. She was the yearbook editor. I was the wallflower. I couldn't achieve that, but my daughter has. So identifying because it resonates as what you were like, or because it goes beyond what you were like. If the mother finds that daughter more, you know, more similar or more satisfying, it creates a lot of tension, and the other daughters notice it. In this novel,
I was just going to say,
plays one daughter against the other. So
Yes.
it has all these layers to it. And all the while, what hangs over them is, how did Samuel really die?
That's exactly right. And there's one of the daughters that I'm thinking in particular in your novel, Caroline. It's, again, not a spoiler, but she sort of, I feel like Lucinda just, you know, she is the mini me, but I think Caroline asks herself, is that really who I'm supposed to be? And how do you feel about Lucinda? Like, you know, she had the goods there with Caroline, and she's going to make sure she is that person, the Palm Beach next gen. So.
Right, because you mentioned it before when you said that the younger women go to Zimmerman.
Yep.
All the stars in Royal Ponciana Place, so at the plaza. So what's interesting is that these daughters can emulate their mother, and Lucinda sees in Caroline, the middle daughter, she works at Barrow's, the family business. The other sisters do not. And she has children, daughters, which really matters to Lucinda because she's so matriarchal. And so she pins a lot of hopes onto Caroline, but also because she's so controlling on her terms. And that's really complicated. And I'm very interested in a story where not only is everyone put to the test, but we all bring ourselves to the party.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can look at these characters and say, gee, if Lucinda did this or Raleigh did that, it wouldn't have happened. But we are who we are. And who are we in terms of the men, Diane? So, all three sisters are married.
Right.
And Samuel was Lucinda's favorite. But, men are kind of, as you said, as I said before, and then you said, the arm candy men. But Lucinda feels on the checklist of Palm Beach that having a husband is definitely necessary. It just helps.
A must,
Because you don't want to be a fifth at the table.
No.
You don't want to be a third at the table. And so she looks at men as, they're fungible, but necessary. Fill a chair.
And in a way, it's actually very modern of her when you think about it, to have that view. Well, just it's yes, I'm getting what I want out of this. So
she's empowering. I'm very interested in the theme of what power means to women, how they garner it, how they protect it. And each daughter has different measures and different levels of power. And it's also a book about waking up. And I did a study years ago called Reclaiming Ourselves. And it's about how we wake up. And based on my research, women wake up in times of when they're really in the throes of a tough time or in the middle of a great time. And you wake up and reclaim yourself and you understand your own needs. So since you said before, each woman is on a journey, each character, it's absolutely true.
Right. And it makes me think too about women claiming their path, in the typical patriarchy path, but now they're claiming their path in the matriarchy. And I think you said something in your nonfiction book about it's the mother-daughter relationship is constantly shifting. And I think we saw this here and you carried it through, in each of the daughters, how their views started changing once that inciting incident, Samuel, happened, and, the betrayal and the lies and all the other themes that are thrown in, the role of the wife. Am I a good wife? What does that mean? Things that these characters, would never question. And not most important, but to the heart of this with Lucinda, what kind of daughter am I being, and what are the expectations?
Why are women judged so harshly? And why are we so concerned about being judged?
Right.
It's really, as I said earlier, it really makes us pleasers, or it makes us not listen to our, inner voices. And I wanted these women, this book has been called, my publisher actually called it authentic fiction, because it's based on so much of my research about how women are positioned in society. And I wanted each of these women to really experience so much, I wanted many layers, but always with the suspense of, how they deal with the new truth. And that is Samuel's gone, and who was he? And what did he do?
No, and that is their new reality. So there you have it. Okay, let's go to fantasy. If this was a movie, which I can so see it a movie, who would play Lucinda and Caroline and Raleigh and Maribelle, of course?
I've thought about it. I've been asked a few times in the last week. Well, Lucinda gave birth to Maribelle back in the Panhandle at a very young age. So she's still, very young and attractive in Palm Beach. And so I thought of Laura Linney or maybe Mary Louise Parker. And then I also thought, of Susan Sarandon. Because I think now someone said to me, what about Nicole Kidman? And I said, oh, wow, that's a great idea. What do you think?
I think you'd have to mess her up a little bit and look like a panhandle woman originally for the flashback.
Right. But by the time she gets to Palm Beach, she's pretty out.
Right. And Laura Linney, I'm crazy about, but can she really look like that Palm Beach, dom of society? I don't know. Nicole Kidman certainly could, right?
Yeah, Lucinda's really evolved, and she got herself through college after, right before Raleigh was born, but when the other girls were already born, the two older daughters, and she was teaching. She was a teacher, and then the business just grew and grew, and so she ended up reinventing herself. Reinvention is one of my favorite themes about women.
Me too. I love reinvention.
I love it. And again, it's about having agency and voice and saying, you know what, I'm determined and I can make this happen. And I admire that. So in terms of the other characters, and of course, this is a fantasy, as you said, I think of Caroline as maybe Anne Hathaway, and I think of Emily Blunt as Maribelle. And then Raleigh is a very dreamy younger sister. That goes to family systems where each sister has her place in the family, but for every member, really Raleigh is the mascot. Maribelle and Caroline can be at odds, but they will both always take good care of their baby sister. So I thought maybe a kind of dreamy sister in terms of demeanor. So maybe Emma Watson or
somebody, boho chic, almost,
that's what she's like. Yeah, definitely.
Yep, Emma Watson. Yes, I like that. Okay, done. Sign her up now. It really has so much potential for that, and it's just, again, I love a good, when I said mystery, and now we've talked about it, and as I said in the beginning, the lessons are so deep in the betrayal and the lies and the different roles everybody plays. There's just so much in it, but it's very easy to really picture the characters. Now we have them as movie stars, but there's no confusion there. So I thought that was great. It was, the depth was there, and expressing all your nonfiction work informed on the fictional page. I love authentic fiction. Did you say that's what you called it? Which really, it shows that your gravitas in the field, but also how you write such great fiction. Do you prefer fiction to writing nonfiction, or as a writer, you must love both? I'll answer, but
I'll answer quickly. I love both forms. They're so different. With nonfiction, you do your research, you have a thesis, you support it. I interview several hundred women per book. I look at serious treatises, pop culture, societal messaging. With a novel, I always know the beginning and the end, and I'm always in favor of surprise endings. So I always have a surprise ending.
So you figured it out and you knew it before it wasn't that it took this way and then it took this unexpected turn. And
Is it hard to make the switch between the two?
No, I love writing both forms. I have a new nonfiction proposal going out, and I'm working on a new novel. I just love, well, Diane, because you're writing is
it's for life. It's for life.
That's right.
Yes.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. You started earlier than I did, but it's for life.
Never too late to start.
No, not at all. And, no, it's forever. And you could do it at 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. You're never too old.
keep going with it, you know?
Yes,
And I
absolutely.
loved your description of the younger sister, because I think, because I'm the youngest, sister, we all were a little that we were always the ones that were like a little out there.
Are you, you're the youngest of
I'm the
three?
youngest, yeah.
Such a really fascinating
There
family
are, I
dynamic.
mean, when you all were talking, we've got some lots of good questions to get to. There's so much material for you in mother daughter sister relation. I mean, it is just a plethora of things,
Yes.
because there is just the dynamic is just fascinating.
It really is. And it continues. You know, my mother was the youngest of three sisters. And I remember as a little girl, the drama, you know, there was no FaceTime, but boy, were they going at it on the phone.
Oh, the phone
And in
calls that
person.
we would listen in on, those were the best things, listening to the one side of those phone calls. Because it is, and it's such a thing that I think it takes a while of like realization that people can be in the same room, the same incident happening, and you're going to have three different interpretations of what that event was.
Well, actually, in this novel, one of the early chapters is when Caroline picks up Raleigh at her house in the storm, and they drive through the rain to get to Maribelle's, and how they each react once they get to Maribelle's, to Samuel's, you know, surprising death.
Right. Yeah, it's a fascinating dynamic of how everybody brings in their things. So here's a question about Maribelle's Shadow in relation to your other two books prior to this. Do you need to read those other two books to read this one?
No.
Okay.
Each of these books is distinctive and stands on its own.
Perfect.
And that was this, and when I began the Palm Beach trilogy, and this is the last book, with my editor at St. Martin's and I talked about that at length, and the books are standalone and you could pick up any one of them at any time.
Perfect. Because that's always something that people ask if they, you know, if they're coming just to you on this one right now, will they miss anything? Or, you know, what I think is that you have a great experience, you read this one, and then, you know, you've got two more other ones that you get to go read about.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a fun one. Okay, so Christine on here is asking, what writers inspire you? What non-writers inspire you, and why?
Okay. Writers who inspire me, I read such different kinds of books, mostly women writers or about women. In terms of sister stories, I read some really good ones lately. I read Hello, Beautiful. And I thought that was interesting. That was sort of a replay of Little Women in some ways. It really, yeah, I saw that in the book. And I'm a big fan of classics such as Jane Austen's books. There are always some sisters in those books, Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice in particular. And then for more serious, you know, books, I would say that Margaret Atwood. She's just incredible. Isabel Allende, I love her books. I reread Buddenbrooks by Thomas Mann almost every year and marvel that he could create Tony Buddenbrooks, Antoinette, but called Tony the way that he did as a young man. I think he was 27 when he wrote that book. But that family structure, those betrayals always intrigue me.
What was that one again?
Buddenbrooks.
Buddenbrooks.
By Thomas Mann. I love that. And I love The Awakening by Kate Chopin. And then I always read Ellen Hildebrand's newest book. I'll be doing that. I want to read a nonfiction book that just came out, Lady Antonia Fraser's book. I just read about it. It's on a famous woman. I think she's painted by Sargent. I don't want to give wrong information, but anyway, right. I read her book on Marie Antoinette and I couldn't sleep at night. And I mean, just the way that it's reported. And so, you know, I'm a fan of all these books. Oh, and I just read The Golden Doves by Martha Hall Kelly.
Oh, okay.
I just read that. So I always read, some writers don't read while they're writing. I've heard that, but I love to read, and I feel like my ideas are so separate, really, that I don't feel muddled or confused or distracted. I feel happy to read other writers
I
always.
love that. So she's asking about non-writers, so just I guess the average just if
Well,
there's other
well,
people
women-
that inspire you.
Oh, so women who inspire me. You know who inspires me? Inspired me because she's gone, my mother and my two grandmothers, who were so different and so wise, and one practical and an immigrant, and the other not an immigrant, and so established and much icier, I might add. But both of them, such mentors to me, my aunts. And then, of course, I'm really in awe of famous women. I'll start with Gloria Steinem, because I just think her work and what she has said all these years is so salient, and just everything that she's achieved has really impressed me. So, women in politics, I'm always interested in first ladies. Laura Bush and literacy.
Right.
Michelle Obama's work, Hillary Clinton's work, just always really fascinated by that.
Yeah, so inspiring, so inspiring. Before we get going, because we're going to kind of wrap up here a little bit, Diane, before we go though, I want to give you a moment. Tell us a little bit, give us what your book is about. Tell us a little bit about what your Royal Coconut Beach Lunch Club is about.
Well, it's about a fundraiser who, brand new to the field, gets a position at in a very wealthy town called Royal Coconut Beach. And she has to navigate the social thicket of fundraising, and how is she going to tease out donations from these people, especially when her boss is having a sordid affair with very important donor. She thinks, is this what I'm going to have to do? And all these hurdles keep getting in the way of her being successful, but she powers on. But as she starts getting sucked into the allure of fundraising amongst the wealthy, reality and fantasy start to blur together. And her marriage, which was very solid, starts to go downhill, especially when a billionaire, debonair person in Royal Coconut Beach is kind of nipping at her heels. And temptation and morals and values are all thrown out there. Along with, I have to say, it's also a mystery, because an unsuspected murder is thrown in. And opposite of Susan, I had no idea that this was going to happen. So my creative writing surprises me along the way. I am, as a former lawyer, I'm very organized and analytical and logical, and writing fiction to me just lets me loose. So on that note, I do have to say, Susannah wrote the blurb on the top of it. And it says, a dazzling tale of strong women, the mega rich, and a mysterious murder, all set against the backdrop of a Tony resort town. The book transports us. So thank you,
And
Susannah.
I'd like to say something about Diane's book, because I was so happy when I was asked to read it and blurb it. She did a great job, and it really does have a mysterious element too. But her characters are so visceral, and the story is such a page turner. So, summer reading.
Summer reading. And it sounds like another one that's just fraught with all of this, just like juicy stuff that's going on. So,
Yes.
A lot of female rivalry, which is another one of my favorite themes. I wrote a book called Tripping the Prom Queen, The Truth About Women in Rivalry. And in Diane's book, I really saw a very true and realistic depiction of women in a very tense and busy workplace. Everyone has a motive. So again, a page turner.
little backstabbing going on maybe. here and
Oh,
there.
definitely, definitely,
Little
definitely.
like watch your back a little bit.
Watch your back, but you don't even know you're supposed to watch your back. There you
I know
go.
that's the thing that gets so it's just like, oh, there's always so much like, oh, let's uplift women, let's do this, let's help each other. And then it's just like you get in some of these circles and it's like, man,
Right.
what's happening here? So Suzanne, you said this Maribel Shadows the last of the trilogy for the and you alluded to another. Are you starting a standalone on your fiction? Are you starting a new trilogy? Can you give us any little details?
I'm actually writing a novel, again, a story that's been with me for a long time. And I know it's a departure from anything else that I've written. It's really wild. So that's what I'm working on.
I love that teaser. So hopefully you will come back to us when that one is done and we will do this again. Susannah, it's great having you again. We had you a couple years ago when we did our couch surfing book tour. So it's always great to have you. Diane, it was great meeting you and good luck with your book. So with that, continued success, Suzanne, with the Maribel's Shadow.
Thank you so much. Thank you, both of you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.